Greetings and good day, future educators. It's another day for another fun-filled learning adventure all about teaching and learning here in Education 11, all about the teaching profession. Well, hello again. This is Teacher Jed together with Teacher Jen, Teacher Micah, Teacher Vic, and Teacher Liz, and all together for this chapter, we will be learning all about communicating the result of authentic assessment tasks. But before we dive in for today's educational session, let us first read out all together a short story all about a teacher and her student. So class, are you all ready to read? Excellent! All together, let us read. Mrs. Navarro is a mathematics teacher who is currently teaching in grade 2. One day, while Mrs. Navarro was discussing to her grade 2 pupils all about long division, she noticed that a few students at the back was not listening or was not paying attention to her discussion, and because of that, she called the attention of the said students and told them to listen since she will be having a quiz after the discussion. So after the discussion, Mrs. Navarro indeed had a quiz in order to evaluate the learning of her students. However, after checking all the papers, Mrs. Navarro noticed that one particular student failed to pass the quiz. And that particular student is Ramil, where out of 10 points, he only got 3 points. And because of this, Mrs. Navarro was indeed disheartened, which this made her very, very sad. So class, now that we are done reading the story, it is now time for us to answer a few questions regarding the story that we have just read from earlier. So, are you all ready? Very well. Excellent. Let us start off with our very first question. So for our first question, everyone, what do you think is the story all about? Can anyone share their idea to the class? Anyone? Yes, very good. So the story is all about the mathematics teacher, Mrs. Navarro, and her student, Ramil. Okay, so in accordance to such class, what do you think is the problem or what seems to be the problem revolving around the short story? Anyone? Yes, very, very good. So the problem in the story is that Ramil, whom is the student, was not paying attention to the discussion of Mrs. Navarro. And because Ramil was not paying attention to the discussion of his teacher, this led to him failing the quiz, wherein out of 10 items, he only got 3. So class, now for the bigger question. As future educators, if you were in the shoes of Mrs. Navarro, what approaches or how would you be dealing or addressing that certain situation that you are in? So imagine that you are Mrs. Navarro, and as future teachers, how would you be able to handle situations such as those? Can anyone give their suggestions regarding such? Yes? Okay, very good. So as suggested, as the teacher, Mrs. Navarro should call the attention of Ramil and confront and talk to him in private. Okay, that is also a good suggestion. Other than that, okay, so other than confronting Ramil and talking to him in private, the teacher should prevent scolding him but rather encourage him to do better the next time. Very good. That is also a very sensible approach for future teachers such as yourselves. So any other suggestions, class? Okay, so that is also a very logical approach. So according to the suggestion, as a teacher, Mrs. Navarro should give Ramil another chance to retake the quiz. Okay, so such situations can never be really avoided in a real life setting, whereas future teachers, soon you'll be confronted with situations such as this. So any other suggestions other than the previous suggestions? Yes? Okay, very good. So you suggested that there should be an adjustment on the part of Mrs. Navarro, since as teacher, she should be transformative and creative in engaging her students with her discussions so that it will gain their interest. At the same time, it will encourage them to pay attention during her discussions. Very good, class. Your suggestions are indeed very remarkable. But class, did you know that as future educators, the best approach or the best resource in order for you to do in handling situations such as those is to communicate such results to the parents or guardians of your students? Yes, as future teachers, there is always a need for you to communicate the results of assessments of students to their parents. So why so? So there is a great need for teachers such as yourselves to communicate with the parents for a reason that if students are able to experience a lot of failures or they are failing in a series of activities, then you as a teacher should reach out to the parents in order for them to help you in motivating the child to learn better. So class, as we all know, as future educators, we are very much aware that learners in a typical classroom setting are very much diverse. And when we say learners are diverse, it is expected that each and every child has varying attributes, talents, skills, and different capabilities in all fields of learning. And as teachers, it is our job to help them in harnessing such skills in order for them to bring out the best versions of themselves. However, class, do take note that as future teachers, always remember that communicating the assessment results of learners does not necessarily apply or imply only to those whom are falling behind classes. It can also be applied to those who are very much doing well in school. So why? Because clearly it is an equal right of parents to know how their child is doing in school. Because clearly, class, although we are teachers and we are considered as second parents to our pupils and students, parents knows their child well. So if we work together with the parents, then it is somehow a step or an approach for us to help the student to be able to keep up with his or her academics. Okay? So class, let us first start off as to what is communication. So, as we all know, communication is simply the act of transferring information from one place, one person, or a group to another, wherein the process of communication involves a relationship between both the sender and the receiver. So in order for us to understand the relationship between the sender and the receiver in the process of communication, let us first understand the difference between the two. So starting off with the sender. So by the word itself, which is to send, the sender is mainly the source of information, wherein the receiver, by the word itself, which is to receive, will be the one to acquire the information. So the sender sends the information while the receiver receives the information. And take note, class, without the two aspects such as the receiver and the sender, then there is no communication, wherein communication is not possible without the two. So class, To expand what we already know, let us understand as to what is effective communication and the role of the sender and the receiver in such. Well, effective communication is a process of exchanging ideas, thoughts, knowledge, and information such that the purpose or intention is fulfilled in the best possible manner, where simply it is nothing but the presentation of views by the sender in a way that is best understood by the receiver. So class, to tackle further the importance of keeping parents and students informed about assessment results, let us now keep our eyes and ears steady and listen to Teacher Jenny. Teacher Jenny, may you share your knowledge to the class.
Good day, everyone. I am Jenny Rose Puyot, and in continuation to the report about communicating assessment results I'll be tackling about keeping parents and students informed of assessment results. So in this chapter, we'll be learning about why it is important to communicate the assessment result to both parents and students. We are already aware that assessment has two types: the formal assessment and the informal assessment. The formal assessment pertains to the standardized measure that often administered to the entire class. Okay, so some examples of formal assessments are written exams, assignments, essays, and other high-stakes activities. While on the other hand, the informal assessment is a non-standardized measure that are often personalized to the student. Okay, so an example of informal assessments are observations, portfolios, anecdotal records, and checklists. And I believe that you are already aware of these assessments since we've tackled them already on the previous discussions. Okay, class, so again, when we say assessments, it has two types. First is the formal assessment, which is a standardized measure and is conducted to the entire class. The second one is the informal assessment that is personalized to the student. So these two types of assessments are both important and needs to be communicated and reported to both parents and students. So now, question: why is it important to communicate assessment results to both parents and students? So it is because open communication will enhance the support needed for students to show yearly gains. So meaning, it is very important for us teachers to communicate the results of assessment to our students so that our students will become aware of their level of performance. And also, communicating the results of assessment to parents is also important. Why? It is because the parents plays a vital role for the development of the child. It is because the parents and the teacher could help one another in thinking possible ways and actions which they think could help for the child's improvement. And now, we are going to tackle about the considerations of informal or classroom assessments. The first is teacher and book publisher should develop quizzes, exams, and essays that are not specialized. Okay, so this means that teachers should formulate any types of assessment. It can be in the form of quiz, essay, or assignment. And also, it is also stated there that the book publisher should also develop quizzes. So nakita man siguro ta ng mga bookstore, mga libro, and at the end of the chapter, naagid siya quiz about the unit. So that is the meaning for number 1. And the next one is parents usually informed with assessment results when the teacher sends the test home with the student. So this means that the teacher should make the parent aware of the child's performance during the test. So example of this is mga elementary students nga. Every after the quarterly exam, the teacher let the student to bring home the test and show to their parents nga mao ni ang score sa bata, and even let the parent to sign the test paper. So that is one way of informing parents about the assessment result of the student. And the third one is teachers should develop a system of regularly notifying parents of these types of test results. So this means that communicating assessment is not easy. Since in communicating the result of assessment, we have to do it regularly. It should be constant. That is why teachers should develop a system. So it can be nga ang teacher magpatawag siya og meeting sa mga parents para i-inform, para to give feedback to the parents about the performance sa ilang students, or other ways nga pwede buhaton sa teacher. Okay, so the next one is allowing feedbacks and questions from parents and students. So we teachers, one reasons or one purpose why we communicate the results of our assessment to parents and students is also to get feedback from them also. They have the freedom and the right to question us, to ask questions about the records, about the performance of the student, why it is this way, nganong nganong ingon ana ang grado sa bata, and other reasons. So we teachers, we should be transparent. We have to show to them nga this is the reason why nganong mo na akong gihatag grado. You can show the class record of the student. The next one is, whenever possible and appropriate, review informal assessment results with students individually to make assessments into a learning opportunity. So this means that after having a informal type of assessment, ang informal type of assessment katuman to mga portfolios, observations, checklists, and others, it is not just kanang for the sake nga makakuha tag information on how the students perform, kung sa ilang level of performance, on how far they've understand the lesson. It is not just on that reason, but it should be that we teachers should go back and review the results, so that we can track the criteria nga slow ang bata. So, and we can also provide some ways and help the student to obtain the standard or achieve the standard criteria. So in that way, we can make assessment into a learning opportunity. And the last one is, we have to always explain the purpose of assessment. So why is it important that we have to always explain the purpose of the assessment? It is because we teachers always have a purpose why we conduct the assessment. And that purpose should be communicated or reported to the students. We should explain to them why they're going to take this test, or why they're going to take this exam, or why we have or we gave that type of assessment. And now, to expand our knowledge and understanding about assessments, let me give you to the next reporter to discuss about the 10 ways for teachers and parents to communicate better about assessments. So now let me give you to the next reporter, Miss Jamay Kamay Maranga.
So good morning everyone. I am your teacher, Jamaica May Maranga. So there are 10 ways for teachers and parents to communicate better about assessments. Before that, according to Boboski in 2018, in a survey conducted in 2016 to parents, students, and educators, a key finding was that more than 6 in 10 parents said their child's teachers rarely or never discuss their child's assessment results with them. Teachers reported in the survey that they felt comfortable with most aspects of assessments, but less so when it came to communicating with parents about the results. That means talking to parents about assessment results is an important step in helping parents understand their child's growth, be a partner in goal setting, and generally give them a role in improving their child's learning. So as a teacher, the following are points you can raise and tips you can impart to parents to help them not only understand assessment and assessment results, but also in preparing their child for testing. So here's the 10 ways for teachers and parents to communicate better about assessments. So the first one is, have them meet with you as often as needed to discuss their child's progress. By making it clear to parents that you want to collaborate with them and help the student improve, you can help but make sure parents don't feel like you're just there to criticize their child. As I learned to our previous seminars, she said, have your own logbook because that will be your best evidence when you speak. You have to provide the facts. Always be ready with your reports. Always create anecdotal reports because it is very important. It is arming us. So we need to make sure we have that book because it will connect to something later on. Sharing specific instances of a student exhibiting positive or negative qualities in school will help parents understand things better. For instance, if you give a progress report that shows a student has a lower science grade than usual, explain to the parent that they are failing because they didn't turn in a recent homework assignment. Similarly, if you are complimenting a student's willingness to help, tell parents of a specific instance.
To continue to the discussion of Miss Jamaica, I am Leslie Miranga. I will discuss the 3, 4, 5, and 6 ways as to teachers and parents communicate better about assessments. The third way is to encourage them to have a quiet, comfortable place for their child to study at home if possible and free of digital distraction. As a teacher, we have to remind the parents to prepare their students in an exam, in a test, to put them in a quiet or comfortable place to study at home so that their child will have a peaceful mind or to have a focus to study on the topics nga i-test sa teachers. Also, as we have to remind also the parents nga free of digital distractions sila. Kay we already know that in our modern age right now, young generation learners are more on using technology. They are more adapted in using digital technology, and for to prevent that one is dili lang sa jud nato sila pakupton og mga technology before the exam so that they will be more on focused sa lang pag-study about sa kanang sa topic nga i-test sa teacher. The fourth ways is to remind them that it's important for their child to well rested on school days and especially on the day of test. Children who are tired are less able to pay attention in class or to handle the demands of a test. As a teacher, we have to remind the parents also nga dapat well-rested ang mga bata on school days, especially in the day of the test, because the children who are kanang tired, if children who are tired, they are less able to pay attention na manggod sa gidiscuss sa teacher, especially sa mga topic nga kanang i-test sa teacher. So labis ang mga bata nga mga tigdugay nga matulog ikagabi ikabuntag jud na iting klase is they are very kanang tired jud ug maglisod na sila og kanang kuan sa attention ba sa discussion sa teachers. The fifth ways is to help them understand the importance of providing books and magazine for their child to read at home. Suggest outside reading list or provide suggestions from the public library. As a teacher, dili raman jud kita ang mo-help sa mga bata nga makakaton og basa og mo-expand pa ilang vocabulary. We have nagkinahanglan pud ta sa tabang sa ilang parents. So we have to help to understand the parents how importance of providing books and magazine nga sa ilahang mga balay aron mabasa-basa sa mga bata. And that way is ma-expand nila ilang reading comprehension, ma-expand or enhance ang ilang reading comprehension through reading the books and magazine. Also, as a teacher, once ta maghimo ta og kanang exam, di ba? Exam, especially in the subject English, we have to use sometimes we have to use mga reading mga stories stories sa kanang sa exam. We have to tell the parents also. We have to tell what are the kanang stories nga nga coverage ma-appeal sa discussion aron mapangitaan og way sa mga parents or adto man sila sa kanang mga library, mga public library, pangitaon nila didto ang mga stories, then ilang ipabasa sa mga bata, and that is one way to help preparing their children for the test. So when it comes to assessment itself, as a teacher, not only dili ra sa paghatag ra nato og tips nga ma-impart ang mga parents to help in preparing their children for tests, but also as a teacher, we have to help the parents better understand the process and communication, and to improve their communications with them. The sixth ways is to explain the purpose of the assessment, such as the difference between those used to inform classroom instructions and those needed to meet state requirements. So as a teacher, we have to explain also what are the purpose of assessment, the purpose of assessment. So we have to explain them the difference of the assessment in nga magamit sa kanang classroom instructions, and those assessment nga needed nga ma-met sa state requirements. So those mga assessments nga inside, or those assessment in the classroom instruction are the kanang mga formative and summative, while ang katong mga assessment nga ma-met state requirements sa mga bata is katong mga projects and portfolios nga ipabuhat sa mga teachers. So those are the 3, 4, 5, and 6 ways as to teachers and parents to communicate better about assessments. And for another ways will be discussed by our next discussant, Ms. Marivic Puyot.
Now, to continue the 10 ways for teachers and parents to communicate better about assessments, I am Marivic Puyot to discuss with you the 7 until the last way. So for number 7, it states that you need to share with them which tests are being used in their child's classroom and how the results of each are used. So, of course, as a teacher, when you are conducting the assessment, you also need to explain to your students what is the purpose of that assessment, and you will also share to them if how the results of each are being used, especially if you are in the state of making their grades. So, for example, if that assessments will be put in the written test, or it can be in their performance test, so that you will be aware as to why do they have that grade, or why do they fail that assessment. So that explains to the number 7. So now let's proceed to number 8. So send a communication about when the tests are being given, when the results will be available, and how the parents will receive the results. So of course, when you are about to conduct the test today, you will make or send a message to the parents the day before you conduct the assessments, for them to be aware that their child will be taking the test today. And also you will tell them prior to that day if when will be the results will be able, if possible it will be after the exam, or the day before tomorrow. And lastly, you will also need to tell them or send them if how they will be able to receive the results, that the results being done by their child. Now, let's proceed to number 9. So, number 9 states that share their child's learning progress using assessments results as well as your classroom observation. So, as a teacher, you also need to communicate or to share to the parent about the learning progress being done by their child in the classroom. You also need to tell them their performance, their attitudes, as to how the child's will be able to cope up per discussion. So if in that way, if ang ginikanan makahibaw, if that certain aspect ang bata naglisod based on the assessment results that you conducted, then of course makahibaw po siya nga kani nga dapita diri tabanganan akong anak. And Also, you as a teacher, aware pod ka nga, dito sad nga, kanang certain aspect, tabanganan ang bata. So, para sad, maka-attain gyud og better results based sa kanang based sa kanang results nga um, makuha possible if the child will going to retake or make another activity. That will explain to number 9. Now, let's move on to the last way. So, point out academic strengths and weaknesses and how they can help address areas of concern outside of the classroom, particularly if assessment results point to specific things they can do. So since we all know that assessment is a tool to identify the strengths and weaknesses of the students, then of course you as a teacher, you will know as to what are their strengths and weaknesses based on the results that you conducted. And you as a teacher, you are responsible to share to the parents about the performance, if what are the strengths and weaknesses of the child. For example, if the child is good in writing, you will tell them. um, if the child is having the difficulty when it comes to reading comprehension, you will also tell them, for the parents also to be aware as to how they can help address that certain areas, or that certain difficulty being made by their child in the classroom. And you also as a teacher, you already know what to do based on how you and the parent agreed to one another. So now that marks the end of the 10 ways for teachers and parents to communicate better about assessment. So, any clarifications, questions, violent reactions? Then if none, I will give you the floor to expand more your understanding about this chapter for my co-discussant.